visuals. There you have it on your screens. We are getting visuals of the Prime Minister in Cyprus, and there are Prime Minister Modi, the Cyprus President. They are attending business roundtable. Remember, this is in order to boost bilateral trade. You have the visuals there coming in, and a ceremonial welcome there you can see for the Prime Minister in Cyprus. These are the visuals coming in. This at a time, a very critical time when there is war. And this is war. It's not just a strike or a conflict. It's war that we've seen in Western Asia, with Israel opening another front against Iran. In fact, let me go across to Rishabh. Rishabh, the significance of this, the Prime Minister right now, even as we speak, being given a ceremonial welcome by Cyprus. But the significance of it all, considering this is coming at a time when Cyprus has openly backed India and Turkey hasn't during Operation Sindoor and the Pahalgam attacks.
Well, Meghna, if we talk about Cyprus, Cyprus has been a long-standing ally of India in Mediterranean Sea. It's a country that has stood by India through thick and thin. Even the relationship goes back to decades, and even after when there was a complete isolation being worked upon for India after India, moved over the whole nuclear test in 1990s. Cyprus was one of those few countries in Europe that stood by India. France and Cyprus, as well as Greece. These were the three countries that actually stood by India even during the whole nuclear test. Since then, India and Cyprus have had very close ties. After Operation Sindoor, Cyprus was among the first countries who stood by India, saying that India definitely has the right to defend. And what India did is in correct manner. Though it's Turkey, which is an immediate maritime neighbor for Cyprus, stood by Pakistan and also went ahead to criticize India for Operation Sindoor. Cyprus did stand with India. So in a very clear manner, the first visit for Prime Minister Narendra Modi post Operation Sindoor is happening in Cyprus. The guard of honor being accorded to Prime Minister. There will be a restricted level and a delegation level talk that will follow. That will be followed by a lunch before Prime Minister leaves for G7. What is significance? Cyprus will take over the presidency of European Union from 1st of January 2026, which means that the FTA that is being worked upon between India and European Union and is scheduled to get signed and sealed by end of this year will be implemented under the presidency of Cyprus. Apart from that, Cyprus do have its own reservations with Turkey, and the way both the countries have been at loggerhead. India's Prime Minister visiting Cyprus is also a very clear message to Ankara as well. So the visuals that are coming in definitely showcases how India wants to go ahead with its geopolitics.
In fact, let me go across to Shreya, who's joining us as well. Shreya, Rishabh too has been speaking about the significance of this meeting. But let's remind our viewers the history between Cyprus and Turkey, how since 1970s there have been territorial conflicts between the two, which may be one of the reasons rather, why a Prime Minister of India after 23 years has now gone to Cyprus. A very strong message, a very stern message, isn't it, going out to Turkey?
Absolutely, Meghna. This is an extremely significant visit of the Indian Prime Minister, as you mentioned, coming after over 20 years. Last time around, we saw an Indian Prime Minister visiting Cyprus was under Prime Minister late Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And remember, Cyprus has been a steadfast partner, a steadfast ally for India, supporting India on the Kashmir issue, on UNSC permanent seat, as well as when we did the nuclear test in Pokhran. Cyprus was one of those countries that voiced their support for India. Right now, as we speak, and Indian Prime Minister visiting this country is important for several reasons. As Rishabh was also mentioning, one of the foremost reasons is the fact that this is a clear signal to Pakistan. The fact that Turkey had invaded Cyprus back in 1974, and that occupied region, remember, Meghna, has never been recognized by anyone in the world. Cyprus, therefore, remains one of the biggest irritants for Turkey, and therefore this visit by the Indian Prime Minister is a clear message to Pakistan that look, and Turkey, that look, if you support Pakistan, we are going to be strengthening our relationship with Cyprus. This is a country we've had good relations with, and we will further strengthen this. The other, significance of this entire visit is also the fact, Meghna, that India is looking to strengthen IMEC, or India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, and because of the strategic location of Cyprus in the Mediterranean, the country itself is keen on joining IMEC, and India, of course, will have more and more countries, more and more partners join the IMEC to strengthen the economic corridor that it plans to, make through Europe and the West Asian region. Now, apart from this, there's also natural gas reserves in Cyprus, which India would like to explore to meet our energy demands. Remember, at the moment for Cyprus, Turkey mining those natural reserves is a big problem, is a challenge, and that's why they want to counter this with more and more countries partnering on their natural gas exploration. And that is one of the reasons why also the India-Cyprus relationship at the moment comes at a very crucial time when there is geopolitical chaos, when India is looking at partners who will voice their support for the kind of shared challenges that the world faces today, first and foremost, of course, being terrorism. And therefore, it also comes at a time when Cyprus has assured India that when it takes the presidency of European Union, it will make sure that it talks about Pakistan-sponsored terrorism and the terror that perpetrates on Pakistani soil at the talks with European Union. Extremely significant assurance by Cyprus. And, while people and the opposition parties back home can mock that Cyprus is a very tiny country, it holds a very, very deep significance for India at the moment. Right now, as we speak, the Prime Minister, along with the leader of Cyprus, of course, in conversation, this is happening after over 2 decades, reflects the kind of importance that today the government of India attaches with Cyprus. And for Cyprus, remember, it will be all the more happy for a big country like India to be investing in it, to be holding diplomatic relations with it as strong as we are seeing at the moment. We also saw when the Indian Prime Minister had reached Cyprus, it was an unprecedented move that the leader of Cyprus had himself come to welcome the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi. That reflects the kind of emphasis, the kind of focus that both countries are facing and are placing on each other at this time. So a lot of significance that the Prime Minister's visit holds at the moment. And of course, for our viewers, we will keep getting them updates as and when they happen. There are bilateral talks scheduled as well, and a joint press statement later in the day today.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Shreya. Let me also go across to Pathikrit Pine, geopolitical analyst, joining us. Pathikrit ji, how do you see the Prime Minister's visit to Cyprus now in 2022, when Dr. S. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, had visited there? He reiterated what he described as India's categorical position on the Cyprus territorial issue, and I'm just quoting him for the benefit of our viewers. He said that I take this opportunity once again to reiterate our principal position on the Cyprus issue. The Republic of India reiterates its commitment for a bi-communal, bi-zonal federation based on UN resolutions as a solution to the Cyprus issue. Is that something that is likely to be reiterated by our Prime Minister now that he's in Nicosia?
Namaste. First and foremost, almost 36% of Cyprus territory is occupied right now by Turkey, while the rest are, by the people of Cyprus who are generally of, Greek origin. So there is a symbolic message in this visit, apart from the hardcore economic aspects to it. Number one, being the fact that Cyprus is one of the key reasons why Turkey, in spite of being a NATO member, has never been able to be part of European Union. Secondly, because Cyprus is literally a theater for the conflict and the face-off that Turkey has with Greece. Therefore, this is a message to Turkey that once they have already decided their preference, because they have actively supported Pakistan during Operation Sindoor. So it is pretty clear that the significance of this visit is in terms of ensuring that the message goes to the Turkish leadership, that India will then side with the Cyprus government and the Greek government, which has extremely strong ties with Cyprus. So apart from that, invariably, there are many other regions issues where there will be cooperation, but because Cyprus has always taken a principled position of supporting India on various aspects, on various issues, including issues about the conflict that we had with Pakistan or the issues of Kashmir. Therefore, it is pretty clear that when it comes to Cyprus and its own territorial integrity, India will side with the government of Cyprus and will be against that part of Cyprus which is occupied by Turkey. Correct. And whatever Turkey says so far as Cyprus is concerned.
Mr. Pine, there's a historical aspect to all of this because India, of course, has a very proud record of UN peacekeeping missions, and at least 3 Indian commanders have actually led UN peacekeeping missions in the past in Cyprus. General Gyani, General Thimaya as well, and also General Diwan Prem Chand, who was in fact involved in the defense of the airport in Nicosia, among other territories at the time of the Turkish invasion as well. So these are memories that will, of course, bring these two countries closer together in the current context as well.
Absolutely, and I think these shared memories and legacies of friendship might possibly in future be taken forward in terms of military cooperation between government of Cyprus and India, as it is, as I stated, that people of Cyprus are generally of Greek origin. So you might see a lot of military cooperation, not just between Cyprus and India, but also with Greece, with whom, because of shared relationship and shared future, shared history, Cyprus has good relation. You might see a lot of military weapon systems being given to both Cyprus and Greece, which Turkey would be very uncomfortable with. And already there are jitters in Turkey about the Akar surface-to-air missile being given to Armenia, which is on the other side of Turkey geographically, and with whom they have extremely bad relationship, again, because of the Armenian genocide, and there is a history to that. So I think there are many areas of cooperation. There will be areas of civilian cooperation in terms of innovative use of digital infrastructure or areas of startups. But I think military cooperation and trade will be playing a very critical role. Remember, this will be like a typical blow to Turkey, that Cyprus, the country because of which Turkey has not been able to be part of EU, would be having the presidency of European Union and then facilitating the trade deal between European Union and India, which will make actually Turkey very uncomfortable. But that is something India should openly do in terms of antagonizing Turkey, because they have taken a stand in favor of Pakistan, not just for the sake of Pakistan, but because India was not even attacking Pakistan. It was merely attacking terror camps across the border, which have been targeting India. So for that, in a very short span of time, Turkey forgetting all that India did during Operation Ghost and humanitarian support during the earthquake, if they have taken a principled decision of supporting Pakistan, then I see no reason why India should not go all the way to support Cyprus and Greece militarily, economically, and otherwise, which of course is definitely a message to Turkey that we are very human, we are patient, but we know also take decisions which can hurt you. Back to you.
Right. Stay with us, Mr. Pine, because what you see on the right of your screens right now is, of course, the bilateral discussions underway between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the President of Cyprus, Nikos Christodoulides, who's, of course, received the Prime Minister there in Nicosia. They had interactions with the business delegations in Cyprus as well. And, of course, a whole host of issues on the table that have come up for discussion beyond simply strategic ties in the context of everything that's happening vis-a-vis Turkey as well. Now, here's what Prime Minister Narendra Modi did say a short while ago.
यह स्पष्ट है कि हमारे संबंधों में आगे बढ़ने की अपार संभावनाएं हैं। फ्रेंड, साइप्रस लंबे समय से हमारा विश्वसनीय पार्टनर रहा है, जिसका आप लोगों ने भी उल्लेख किया। कई भारतीय कंपनियों ने भी साइप्रस में, और एक प्रकार से साइप्रस को यूरोप का गेटवे के रूप में ही देखा है। आज आपसी व्यापार $150 मिलियन पहुंच गया है, लेकिन हमारे रिश्तों की वास्तविक क्षमता इससे बहुत अधिक है। आपके विचारों में सिर्फ संभावना ही नहीं, संकल्प को भी मैं महसूस कर रहा हूं।
So that was, of course, the Prime Minister speaking a short while ago. Let me, in fact, go across to my colleague Srinjoy Chaudhary as well. Srinjoy, this is also a visit about shared memories between India and Cyprus. India has actually led peacekeeping missions on behalf of the UN in Cyprus. Our generals have been there also defending the territory of Cyprus against Turkish invasion, protecting the airport, among other infrastructure as well several decades ago. And that is something that's been routinely brought up in bilateral discussions, especially from the Cypriotic side as well, remembering these contributions on the part of India, something that now will be discussed with even more prominence, one would assume, Srinjoy, given what's happening with Turkey, its moves against India, its open and categorical support for Pakistan during Operation Sindoor as well.
There is a green line. This green line divides Cyprus. And the southern part of Turkey very clearly southern part of Cyprus very clearly has Turkish control. Now, Prime Minister Modi's going to Cyprus is also important because the elephant in the room in this case is Turkey, is Ankara, because during the last near war that India had with Pakistan, those 4 days, it was very clear that support from Turkey was coming. And that support was very, very evident to the armed forces. For instance, when Pakistan lost one of their eyes in the sky, the Turks replaced it immediately from one of their own. Now, that kind of support, that kind of help is unexpected. And therefore, it's one thing to supply weapons to a country. It's quite another to give a strategic weapon system to another country in the midst of an operation. So this is something India has not forgotten. And Cyprus will remember India's support, as you rightly said, over those years.
Stay with us, Srinjoy. Let me go across to Mr. Pine as well. Mr. Pine, for the benefit of our viewers, I'll just quote a short excerpt from the Indo-Cyprus joint declaration statement that had been signed in 2017. And it said the two sides exchanged views on developments in their respective regions and international issues of common concern, most notably the fight against international terrorism and ways to reinforce measures to stem the financing of terrorism and disrupt the revenue stream towards terrorist groups. Now, this is something that was discussed by both countries almost 8 years ago during one of the bilateral visits and was discussed in the joint statement as well. Do you expect these two countries to go a step further in the joint statement this time round vis-a-vis terror?
Well, I would not be surprised if something more is given in this statement this time, the joint declaration. Because if you look at one of the concerns that Cyprus has concerning Turkey again is because if you see when the last statement came, that was a time when fight against ISIS was at its peak in Middle East, and ISIS was wreaking havoc in the whole of Middle Eastern region, what they did in Iraq and Syria, and we have seen the outcome of that. And Turkey was considered to be the gateway for the rest of the world to get inside Syria. And you know, there were all kinds of people with radicalized mindset coming to Turkey and then moving towards Syria. So the concerns of Cyprus are very similar to that of India when it comes to terror financing, and as well as incubation and mentoring and funding and training of terror organizations. So what Pakistan does to South Asia is almost de facto what literally Turkey did during the ISIS crisis in Middle East, where it was presumed and considered that Turkey had been giving active support to modules of ISIS. And that does have an impact on Cyprus, primarily because the northeastern part of Cyprus has a Turkish government. So the possibility of many of these modules landing into Cyprus, creating problem over there, was not always a very, very strong apprehension for the Cyprus government. And that's why that declaration came. This time also because of Operation Sindoor and because of same things, that can be included.
Well, let's see what the big takeaways are once the joint statement does come out. Many thanks, Mr. Pine, for your invaluable perspective on this, and also, of course, my colleague Srinjoy Chaudhary. For the time being, we're slipping into a short break. We'll come back with more on the other side.